90.3 WHPC now presents Law You Should Know. The law affects every aspect of our lives, our home, our jobs, and our recreational activities. Now, learn about the law and how to protect yourself against the loss of your liberty or property, and learn how to stand up for your rights and seek compensation when you have been wronged. Your host for Law You Should Know is attorney Kenneth J. Landau, a past dean of the Nassau Academy of Law, and frequently lectures to lawyers on ethics and avoiding problems with clients, and to the public on how to choose and use lawyers. This is Law You Should Know on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome to Law You Should Know. Our special guest today is management consultant Dr. Jennifer Nash, who's a coaching and consultant to law firms and others, and she's going to tell us why it's so important for companies to prioritize people, because this way they will perform better, and it's better for them and for the business as well. Jennifer, welcome to Law You Should Know.
Thank you so much, Ken. I'm delighted to be here.
So we're emerging on the dawn of AI, and we're in post-COVID. Why is it so important now to address humans, whether they're lawyers or staff or someone else who's working for a company? Why is it so important to focus on them?
You know, it's such an important question, and I think it's one that more people should be asking. And I would invite people to think about, when you prioritize people as human beings first, you get to see them in ways where they bring all of their strengths and talents to what they're doing. And we know right now for today that people are searching for purpose and meaning in their work. And when you understand what that purpose and meaning is, and you can tie that to the work that they're doing or the organization that they're working in, it gives them that connection to then be engaged and perform at a higher level.
And you want them to feel that they're more than a widget, that they're part of a team, helping the consumer, helping the company, helping each other.
Exactly.
And this is true whether they're working remotely, or they come into the office several times a day, and even with AI or more technology, that there's a human element, and that human element is so important.
Mm-hmm. We see often technology brings us together, but we're even more disconnected through those screens, because we've forgotten how to talk to one another in person. And COVID exacerbated that a little bit. But we see the younger generation that's having trouble with interviews, right when they graduate from college. We see, high schoolers who would prefer to just text instead of go downstairs and talk to mom and dad. So there's this tendency for people, I think, to rely on technology right now, when what we really need to do is be refocusing on those social skills and those relational skills to help us connect as human beings together.
And because of technology, because of COVID, people may not be used to actually speaking to one another or seeing one another, and to deal with a human, to help interview them, get facts from them, impart analysis to them. And that's still a very important skill in many different businesses, including law firms.
Absolutely. Law firms, as you know, it's a relationship-based business. And so the ability to have that human and relational skill set to connect with your clients and connect with, their families, and to help them and serve them in a way that gets them the results that they need and are looking for, you need to be able to have those conversations. It goes back to the communication.
And some law firms and perhaps other firms are focused on the billable hour. How is that good, and how is it bad? And how can employers and employees reorganize their priorities?
Billable hours is very common in law firms as well as in other organizations that have client-based work. One of the things that it can really impact is, the physical and mental health of, attorneys in the firm. That, when it's taken to the extreme, too many hours, that leads to burnout, right? And even, in a similar vein, it can affect the quality of the service that is being provided to that client.
And also, workers may have other interests, especially the newer generations. They may want time for extra hobbies, for vacation, for families, for children, to take care of other people. And So is it better if employers have some flexibility about that? Some people may want to work the extra hours and some may have other priorities. Should they have different tracks for lawyers or financial people or accountants to let them take care of what the things most important to them?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting concept, like having different types of career tracks based on what you're interested in and actually what you're prioritizing, right, for your time. I think that each employee should have the opportunity to decide what that looks like for themselves. If they want to be on that 100-hour track a week going for partner, then that's the right track for them. But that isn't necessarily the right track for everyone else. And so maybe there's an opportunity for, the leaders or the partners in the law firm to rethink what does that look like so that we can be more inclusive and attract the talent that we need so that we can move forward and serve clients.
And has job sharing gained any ground over the past 10 or 20 years where people literally take one job and split it? Or, maybe there's a team that, so everyone just works 3 or 4 days a week because they have time for other things, either for enjoyment or any of those other priorities they may have.
Mm-hmm. I used to work at Ford Motor Company, and there were 2 women who job shared. And so it was always very interesting to me. I hadn't seen very many examples of that in the workplace at that time. And fast forward to today, over a decade later, they are still job sharing. So I know that still exists out there. I don't know how prevalent it is. But I think it's an interesting model, especially if there are people that have different tracks that they want to be on, yet they can collaborate so that the firm gets what it needs.
And part of that can be in person, and part of that can be, remotely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And, that's, as that's a big conversation right now out in the world. People being asked to return to the office and others deciding, this remote work is really working for me. It's working for my family. I'm saving on commuting costs. I'm saving on commuting time. I don't want to go back to the office. And what we're seeing in organizations and probably in law firms as well is, the firms and organizations that are responding to that and giving employees what they are actually seeking so that they can work at their best are the ones who are winning the talent war.
And supposedly in the legal field and others, many employees don't want to return full-time to the office. And if they have enough, if they're senior enough or valuable enough, their employer is more willing to accommodate them.
I think that's true for some of them. I think for other organizations, maybe they have a large footprint from an office space perspective. And so there's this tension between, well, we want to fill the office space and get our money out of that versus, we want to do what's right for the employee. And that is a conversation that continues to happen. And there's a lot of polarization around that right now.
But as we go forward, if they're renewing a lease or they have flexibility to sublet, they might be able to save money on that office space and lower their footprint so that there'll be an additional savings with the job sharing or remote work.
Exactly. And I actually see, going forward, I see an opportunity for a lot of these, real estate companies, that have all these different office spaces that may be vacant, to transition that into another, repurpose the use for that, right? Maybe it becomes housing of some kind.
Or childcare.
Exactly.
Or maybe you let some of your clients that work there so they're very close to you and they're connected with you.
Yeah, that could be.
So you think it's better, best practices, and they'll have happier workers if there are different models for billable hours, whether in management or law or accounting or something else. If a law firm has the flexibility, they allow the job sharing, they have a part-time track, those people that want to work 100 hours a year, and they would all be paid accordingly, but that would keep experienced workers happy and connected to the firm.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting model to pursue, right? I don't know if you watch Suits on Netflix. My husband and I just finished that. And it was really interesting to see, how the lawyers there, they were all pretty much on that 100-hour-a-week track, right? Because they were all looking to make partner. But yet there would be a few people who would come into the scenes every once in a while who were like, oh, I'm going out for this and doing this after work. And the lawyers would be like, well, why are you doing that? Because we don't have time to do that. And so you could clearly see, like, there's these different tracks that they were on. And each track was working for that person because they had different priorities and different expectations.
And the newest generation may have other priorities, and they may be willing to have a different model.
Exactly.
Or, than working 100 hours a week and making an extraordinary sum of money. Or maybe their needs change. They get older, they want to be a parent, they have to take care of a parent, they want time for other things, and they're willing to work less and take less and be happier.
Yeah. Our priorities change throughout our lives, right? When you first graduate, you want to just maybe do it all and see it all and get all those hours in, and you don't have anything else vying for your attention at that moment in time. But as you said, as you move through your 30s and your 40s, your priorities shift and change. And so it becomes a question of what are you prioritizing at that moment? And is the law firm or organization willing to help you with what's most important to you at that moment, because they're seeing you as a human being and not just an employee who can provide, output for their organization.
And in the end, you'll have happier employers if there's more flexible options and you have different tracks and can retain those people.
Absolutely. It costs way more to get a new employee than it does to keep the one that you have.
Especially if you like them and they sort of like you. I just want to remind our listeners, we're talking with Jennifer Nash. She's a management consultant, and she is helping lawyers to do a better job. And she encourages law firms and others to prioritize people, and they'll be more productive and they'll perform better that way. Jennifer, I know you have a book that you've recently authored. Just tell us the title and about some of the things covered in that book.
Sure. So the title of the book is Be Human, Lead Human, How to Connect People and Performance. And the book is about how do you improve the connection and communication between your people, between them and the organization, and between them and their work. And so when you create those connections, you can augment performance.
And just tell us about some of the things you cover in the book that might be especially valuable to lawyers or employees or in any size or any level of firm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, as we mentioned earlier, communication is key when it comes to building client relationships and interfacing with clients, and in law firms, that's critical to be able to do that. I come from a professional services background where, relationship building was critically important to the consulting work that I was doing and building those relationships with clients. So in the book, I talk a lot about, what are the human and relational skills that you need to be effective, not only in that relationship building space, but also as you serve the client and hear what they need and understand what they need and help them feel that they are important and that they are valued and that they matter. It's not just about the money that they are paying your firm, to provide them a service.
And I know one of your slogans is prioritizing people to power performance. And by that you mean if you help people deal with these issues of work and the workload and getting support and flexibility, they will in turn do better and have a more powerful performance and be more loyal to their employer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. One of the ways that law firms can do that is by looking at like flexible work policies like we've been talking about, right? They can offer, a variety of work arrangements to accommodate, personal and family needs, which helps give you some of that work-life integration or work-life balance that people like to talk about.
And I also just want to remind our listeners, you're listening to Law You Should Know on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nash Community College in Garden City, New York. And if you've missed any portion of the show, you can just go to the podcast at nccradio.org. What future directions do you see or trends that you think will happen in 2024 and beyond for law firms and other firms?
So I think there's a couple trends. I think first and foremost, law firms and organizations need to understand that there is no going back to the status quo. There were so many negative consequences of COVID, but I think one of the positive consequences of COVID is that it really has caused us to rethink how and when and where and why we work and how we work best. And so for law firms in particular, looking for that top talent to serve their clients, they really need to keep that in the forefront of their minds as they're looking to attract new talent into the organization. We know that, young professionals today want that sense of purpose and meaning in their work, and they're looking for something that fulfills them. And so the more that the law firms and other organizations can prioritize and connect that for these young professionals, the more successful they will be at attracting talent.
And also that, what about some of the differences between small organizations and small law firms and bigger law firms? Do they still have these challenges, or are some of them more flexible in offering their employees, treating them with more flexibility?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that they all have this same challenge, but maybe to different degrees, right? So, in a larger firm, because you have more people, you may have more opportunity to provide a wider range of choices, right? But in a small firm, even though you may not have that wide range of people and the wide range of choices, you should still be able to offer at least one or two that would be able to personalize and tailor that work experience to the employee.
And it could be job sharing. It could be hiring part-time workers, which might be a win-win situation, because maybe you don't have so much work and you don't have to shell out as much for the labor.
Exactly. And, there's also the opportunity of, a small firm, because they are smaller, they can have niche areas. And so perhaps those niche areas aren't as busy, as maybe some of the bigger firms that offer more services and have more resources.
Any other ways besides billable hours to promote human values and a better culture within firms?
So I think one of the ways that comes to mind right now for me is, prioritizing diversity and inclusion. So, as law firms look to the composition of their workforce and they look at how employee voices are heard, if they are able to build a culture where every voice is heard and respected, all the way from, the office staff up to the partners, that helps with innovation. It helps with building trust. And it also helps with, attracting a diversity of clients that are aligned with the mission of the organization.
And maybe many clients insist on that. And also, if people work in a diverse environment, they're usually better equipped. If you're dealing with juries and different judges and different clients out there, it helps you to make connections with them. And again, especially in building a business.
Absolutely. I think another thing that is also very helpful for that is having like an apprentice or a mentorship model, right, in the organization. So, that helps promote this continuous learning. It helps, young professionals coming in who, maybe graduated during COVID and have never worked in an office before or never had that opportunity to, learn from someone who is more senior to them. It gives that opportunity to promote knowledge and sharing amongst, the people in the firm.
And many law firms do hire part-time students or perhaps have summer, law students working for them during the summers, and other businesses do as well. And it's a very good idea for reaching those goals you mentioned. Are there other ways to try to build trust with clients?
I think one of the things that is the best way to build trust is to be honest and to be authentic. So when I say honest, what I mean is, managing expectations appropriately and setting the understanding that, here's what we can achieve for you. Here's what we cannot achieve for you. This is what might be possible. This is more probable. This is what we expect. So in other words, managing those expectations through open communication.
And they might evolve and change in the course of handling a matter or litigation or a plan or some kind of other document. So it's a continuing scenario.
Yes, exactly. And I think another way that you can build trust with clients is to be responsive, right? So if you send a note to your lawyer and they don't respond to you, that starts to put the seed of doubt into your mind as to, are you really a priority for them? And so being responsive and being timely in your answers to any questions or needs or concerns that they have help you, continue to foster and build that trust with them and show them that they matter and they're important to you.
Are there other ways to try to engage with the client to maybe look at some of the activities they're involved with, the non-business activities, the charitable activities, other missions that are important to them, and try to get involved in those products to show you're on the same page with them?
Yes, I think, you can always take a look at what is of interest and important to your client and demonstrate a curiosity about that, ask them questions about that. Some law firms and some other organizations will offer like a community service day, right? Or a volunteer day, or I know law firms do offer pro bono services often for clients, in a certain category or in a certain type of service area. That helps promote that purpose, and it also helps create connection between, clients and the law firm, particularly when it comes to their culture.
And many younger attorneys or other attorneys do also want to do pro bono or help a charity. So if you take ideas from your employees about what's important to them, and whether it's a law firm or another organization, you're showing that you support their mission, will give them time and maybe some background or money to help with that charity. And it could be good for business, and it's good for goodwill.
Exactly.
How else can a law firm recognize talent or another firm recognize talent among their employees?
So I think often that comes with time. So there may be employees who demonstrate right out of the gate that they have, potential, that they're highly skilled at what they're doing, and they can see a path, up the ladder in the organization. And I think sometimes there's others who, it takes them a little bit to settle in and get used to things. And then once they do and they feel comfortable and they have that trust and they feel safe that they can take risk and perform and not be punished for failing, they start to demonstrate that they have an ability and a capability that continues to grow as they go up the ladder.
And should there be individual and flexible goals in an organization? Because one person may want to become partner and earn the big bucks. Others may just want to develop an expertise in a certain area of law and limit the time they put into work. Should there be paths for both of them and goals they can independently meet?
Mm-hmm. I absolutely think so. I think there should be job descriptions that clearly specify what the expectations are, what the skill sets are that are required, what the hours are that are expected, and those should be clearly laid out for each of those paths. Coming from the professional services background that I have, that was the model that we had in that organization, where if you wanted to go to partner, this was the track, this is what was expected, these are the milestones that you had to meet along the way to get there, versus, if you went this other track, here were the expectations, this is what you needed to do. And actually, they were different skill sets, Ken. So there wasn't a comparison of, oh, well, you're doing Apple work here, and this job is Apple work, so they're going to be paid the same. Often there was a difference in what that meant. And maybe there was a requirement that the partner track had to develop their own book of business, right? Which was very different than this other track, which was maybe a thought leader track, right? In developing expertise for the organization. And that didn't require business development. So, there are different competencies and capabilities, and so the firm would need to think about how do they want to reward each of those, and what are their expectations for each of those different paths. And there might be more than two.
Right. And I just remind everyone, our guest is Dr. Jennifer Nash. She's a management consultant. She's the author of Be Human, Lead Human, about prioritizing people to power performance. And as you just mentioned, there's a different performance that everyone wants to achieve. You're listening to Law You Should Know on 90.3 WHPC. If you missed any portion of the program or you want to tell someone else about it, just go to the website, nccradio.org. Are there other ways that is it important for firms, law firms and others, to attract millennials and Generation Z? Are they looking for other things as well?
So I think we've touched on a few of them that are very important. First and foremost is the purpose and meaning in the work, right? Why are they doing this work? How does it make the world a better place? I think that's the second point, because they want to understand that the work they're doing has an impact. So it's not just that it has a purpose for them and they find it meaningful and intrinsically rewarding, but they also want to see what is the impact of that work out in the world, and how does that make the world a better place? The third thing that they're looking for is that flexibility and autonomy, right? To set their hours, to work in the way that works best for them, because honestly, they went through COVID. They saw that things didn't have to be status quo, right? We didn't have to do the typical traditional hours and go to an office every single day like maybe their parents had to. And they have basically said, look, we're not going to do that. It doesn't make sense for the world. We're polluting the air because of all the traffic, et cetera, and the congestion. So, let's find a better way. And so I think keeping those three things in mind as law firms are looking to attract talent is going to really help them in that race for the best talent.
And Jennifer, I just want to ask you if you can give us your website, how our listeners can find out more about your books and some of the other work that you've done, an expansion of more details on these many ideas that you have.
Mm-hmm, sure. So my website is drjennifernash.com. It's drjennifernash.com. They can find more information there about my book, and they can also find more information about any services that I provide.
And are there other beliefs that might get in the way of practicing the human-centered leadership that you've been telling us about?
Yes, we alluded to a few of those before. So one of them is, thinking that everything has to be done the way that it was done before. So sort of being stuck in the past. I think, that is probably the primary one. And I think the second one is changing how we think about and practice leadership and looking at that for this new world of work versus where we were before COVID.
And is it good to get feedback from your workers, both young and old, explaining your goals to them and ask them what is the best way we can work together to achieve those goals rather than telling them this is the way it is and this is what you must do?
Yes. The telling them how this is and this is what you must do is very command and control. It's very old school, and it particularly doesn't work well with the younger generation that you're trying to attract into the firm. So giving them a voice, listening to them, helping them understand that they are heard and that their voice matters is extremely important in getting the firm to be optimized going forward.
Okay, I think you've given us many good ideas for law firms, the management and their workers and other types of firms. And I'd like to thank Dr. Jennifer Nash for being our guest on Law You Should Know. If you want to listen to the podcast again or tell someone else about it, it's available at nccradio.org. And please join us next week at the same time on WHPC 90.3, the voice of Nass Community College in Garden City, New York.